Uranus wasn't supposed to matter. No one fought wars over it. No one colonized it. No one even pretended it was worth the fuel to mine. It was a frozen monument to indifference, a pale blue smudge on the edge of every map, a planetary afterthought. Every probe sent had been swallowed whole by its storms. Every long-range scan returned the same verdict: cold, dead, inert. And yet, here we were. I stood at the main viewport of the Nautilus, watching the clouds turn in slow-motion violence beneath us. Not a real window, of course. Glass wouldn't last a second in space, and certainly not against the winds below, but a high-fidelity projection. The resolution was so sharp I could almost believe there was nothing between me and that crushing, frozen abyss. From a distance, Uranus always looked like a washed-out jewel in astronomy textbooks, soft blue and featureless. Up close, it was something else entirely, the color of an old bruise, streaked with ochre clouds and gas voids where the atmosphere folded in on itself. Deep bands of storm rolled over one another, the winds tearing at speeds faster than any hurricane back home. Nothing moved out there except the storms, and the storms never stopped. The crew had stopped watching days ago. The novelty wore off quickly out here. At first, we'd lingered at the viewport between shifts, letting the alien scale sink in. But as always, the work crept in, routine replaced awe, and what had once been strange became background noise. We were 5 men in a metal shell. Commander Gentry, myself, Nash, Oy, and Wesley. We were 1.8 billion miles from home, orbiting a world no one cared about. The silence on board was constant, not loneliness exactly, just a kind of background emptiness that even conversation couldn't erase. Our mission was as straightforward as they came. Orbital survey, spectral analysis, probe deployment, a cold rock under colder clouds. The plan was to take readings, confirm nothing of interest, and move on. But the data scrolling across my wrist terminal told a different story. The anomaly hadn't moved, not since we'd first picked it up. It was buried deep under the cloud layers, radiating heat. Persistent heat. That wasn't right. Thermal signatures should fade, dispersing into the atmosphere and disappearing into the planet's entropy. This one held steady, as if it were maintaining itself. "You're obsessing again," Gentry's voice came from behind me. He had that tone, the one he used when he thought I was spiraling. A military man in a scientist's uniform, all hard angles and measured authority. Years of keeping men alive in places they shouldn't have been had taught him not to linger on things you couldn't change. "I'm not obsessing," I said, keeping my eyes on the projection. "I'm watching a pattern." He stepped up beside me but didn't look at the planet. His gaze stayed fixed on me, arms crossed. "Langston, we've got 3 days of survey time before we burn to the next site. If the anomaly isn't actionable, it gets logged and left behind." "I know." "Then stop acting like it's personal." That made me look at him. "You ever seen a heat source sustain itself without fuel?" He didn't answer, just held my stare for a moment before turning away. His silence told me enough. He'd seen something like it before, and he didn't like where it led. When he left, I pulled my focus back to the readings. I'd been accused of fixating before, and it was true. Years of mapping dead planets, tracing the remnants of things long gone, had taught me to follow patterns to their end. Out here, obsession was a survival skill. Behind me, Oy and Wesley were arguing again about probe deployment schedules. Nash was at his console, recording the latest telemetry with clinical detachment. He liked to joke that he was here for the same reason as the probes: collect data, send it home, be forgotten. I pushed off toward my station, the Nautilus's narrow corridor swallowing me in padded walls and bolted equipment. The ship was built for survival, not comfort. Every inch engineered for efficiency in deep space. The spectrographs were getting stranger. Infrared imaging suggested a structure at least 5 kilometers wide, not uniform, not natural. The heat wasn't coming from within. It was scattering through the surrounding medium, blending in, masking itself. The longer I stared at the numbers, the more certain I became. Whatever it was, it didn't belong here. And it wasn't just sitting still. I should have felt excitement at the prospect of discovery, but instead something tightened in my gut. Not fear, just the quiet, certain sense that something was about to change. The first drill went down an hour after I saw the latest readings. It took 20 minutes to punch through the upper atmosphere. The storm shredded our telemetry with static, but the drill held steady, feeding back LIDAR scans as it descended. Oy sat at his console, narrating the descent like a sports commentator, betting we'd find nothing but more ice. The data said otherwise. When the drill reached the anomaly, it didn't slow. No impact reading, no sign it had met resistance at all. It slipped in. The sensors registering the density changed the way a diver feels the shift between water layers. By the time we confirmed the numbers, the heat had spiked. On screen, the structure flexed. We watched the breach seal itself in under 90 seconds. No liquid, no debris, just a slow, organic knitting of material, like a wound scabbing over in fast forward. I didn't say the word. Not alive. Not yet. Saying it would change the mission, hand it to someone else, someone who wouldn't care who had found it. But I could feel Gentry's eyes on me. He knew what I was thinking. We go deeper, he said. And that was that. The second drill was smaller, designed for a clean core extraction. It wouldn't penetrate far, just enough to pull a contained sample before the anomaly closed up again. We prepped for biological containment anyway. Minimal exposure. No one wanted to say why out loud. It reacted before we touched it. The infrared feed lit up first, a slow ripple of heat moving through the lattice, like muscle tensing. The moment the drill breached the surface, the resistance spiked, then dropped into open space. Nash frowned at his seismic readings. Empty pocket, he said. Internal void, buried under the shell. I was still processing that when the reactor cycled, venting excess heat into the atmosphere. Routine. Harmless. Except this time the readings changed. The anomaly's temperature curve didn't follow diffusion patterns. It was absorbing the heat. That wasn't possible. Not here. Not at this depth. But the thermal profile was clear. It wasn't just holding energy, it was metabolizing it. Then the storm above shifted. For centuries, Uranus's storms had followed stable patterns, chaotic to the eye but consistent in their flows. Now the bands were twisting in unnatural spirals, their rotation subtly bending toward the anomaly's location. The change was small, almost invisible, but it wasn't random. Nash's voice was tight. Reactor outputs creeping up, 0.4%. Could be instrumentation error, Wesley offered, but his tone said he didn't believe it. It's not an error, I said. Gentry cut in. Shut down reactor exhaust. Cut the heat leakage. Nash moved fast, shutting the vents. The ship's hum dropped to a lower register, but the pressure readings from below kept changing. The thermal mass was growing. 300 meters below the shell, Nash said. And it's increasing. How? Oy asked, leaning forward. Before Nash could answer, the drill feed cut out. What's the last frame? Gentry asked. Oy pulled it up. A shape rose from the void, gelatinous, shifting, not quite solid but not fluid either. Its edges bled into the medium around it, adjusting as if deciding what to be. Then the image dissolved into static. A low hum passed through the comms. No words, no language, just vibration. I felt it in my teeth, in the back of my skull, like pressure before a storm. My pulse hammered. This wasn't noise, it was a signal, and it had noticed us. The truth came on slow, like frost crawling across glass. This thing hadn't been dormant. It had been waiting, buried in the cold, its shell mimicking the ice around it, storms masking its presence. Our drill hadn't woken it. Our reactor exhaust had. We'd given it the signal it had been waiting for. And now it was breathing. The storms above had broken their ancient formations, bending toward the excavation site in a tightening spiral. Beneath, the anomaly's heat signature pulsed in slow rhythm, as if drawing in the planet's energy with every cycle. It's metabolizing the atmosphere, I said. My voice sounded far away, even to me. Nash's knuckles were white around his console. Thermal mass is up by 20%. This isn't linear growth anymore. It's accelerating. The comms hummed again. That same deep resonance, a pressure in my skull. It didn't feel like sound, it felt like intention. Gentry's voice cut through it, steady, flat. Controlled overload, focus the blast downward. For a moment, no one moved. Then Wesley broke the silence. We'll lose the containment lattice. The whole ship will go with it. That's the point, Gentry said. No one argued. We all knew there was no other play left. I bypassed the reactor fail-safes. Nash purged the core limiters. Wesley plotted a vector collapse to funnel the blast into the excavation site. Oy muttered under his breath, God, I hate this job. But his hands didn't stop moving. 5 minutes on the clock. The viewport projection showed the storm tightening into an unnatural vortex. The planet's color had deepened, the bruised dark blues now threaded with a sickly, molten glow. I pressed my palm to the edge of the console. This thing had been here longer than we'd been looking at the sky. Maybe longer than we'd existed. It had been meant to stay buried. Or maybe this was just its cycle. Long sleeps, brief awakenings, each time finding something new to consume. 3 minutes, Nash said. No one spoke. The hum of the reactor filled the silence, layered with the low groan of the hull as gravitational forces shifted again. Something below was moving upward, not fast, but inevitable. The resonance in my skull built until it felt like my thoughts weren't my own. I couldn't make out words, just the shape of meaning, coiling and uncoiling. A recognition. It knew what we were about to do. 1 minute, Wesley said. I glanced at Gentry. He wasn't looking at the screens anymore. Just straight ahead, jaw set, as if staring into something far beyond the viewport. 30 seconds. The vortex below split open, a vast chasm in the clouds spiraling down into darkness. And there, at the heart of it, something vast shifted in the deep. A silhouette with no fixed shape, folding and unfolding in on itself. 10 seconds. It wasn't moving to stop us. It didn't need to. I had the sudden, sickening thought that maybe it wanted this, that our blast would do something we couldn't predict. But there was no time to stop. 5. The core breached in a star-bright eruption, plasma collapsing inward toward the anomaly. For a fraction of a second, I saw it writhe against the pull, its shape breaking apart and reforming, fighting the heat. Then the light took everything. The Nautilus came apart in silence. Wreckage tumbled into the crushing depths, scattering across layers of methane and ice. By the time the long-range probes arrived weeks later, the anomaly was gone. No heat signature, no structure, only altered storm patterns spinning in unfamiliar rhythms. The official report called it inconclusive, but in the fragmented remains of our final transmissions, buried deep in static, there was one voice, faint, distorted, almost unrecognizable, but human. Do not return.